What's up everyone? Welcome back to the Brenner Video YouTube channel. And today we're in York, PA with driver of the number 4 Outlaw kart, Eric Allen. Eric, thank you for having us.
Thanks for coming.
This is the first time we've seen one of these. What is this?
This is an Outlaw kart. It's basically a go-kart for all intents and purposes with a 500cc two-stroke motor on it.
500 cc's.
Yes, sir.
How fast could something like this go?
It depends what size track. I mean, speed is relevant. It's actually more fun on the smaller tracks. The horsepower to weight ratio is really good on these. Makes them fun.
And I'd imagine this is not your first car that you've ever ran?
No, I actually raced sprint cars back when I was young enough to do so and had a little bit of money and no kids and a wife and that. I just got back into outlaw kart racing just to kind of prove I could still do it.
How long have you been racing?
I've been around it my whole life, let's say. I would say I started racing what I would call regular sprint cars, 410 sprint cars, when I was 19, I believe, which would have been 1993, and raced them on and off for probably 8 or 9 years. Worked for other people in their race cars in the meantime, and then took a break from it, had to walk away from it for many years till I had a little bit of money again and wanted to prove something to myself. And so about 8 or 9 years ago, I got into outlaw kart racing. It was big. Getting big because Kyle Larson came from that, so everybody was looking at it, and did it for about 4 years, and then kind of got busy where I'm at now and took a break. And recently Scott Gobrek from Baps Motor Speedway and McGrewbid Motoplex, he kind of twisted my arm to get back into racing, so here we are again.
Your last name is Allen?
Yes, sir.
Who else in your family has that last name?
Well, all the males probably, but so
it's true.
My uncle's Bobby Allen, passed away 6 months ago or more, or around there now. It actually started with my grandfather, who was Joe Allen, who they were all from Florida originally, and he grew up in Daytona Beach and was friends with Bill France from NASCAR and that. He ran NASCAR in like 46, 47, 48, right around that era. And then my uncle Bobby Allen, was of the age to race then, so he got into go-karts. And my grandfather stopped racing and kind of focused on him. And Bobby Allen was world go-kart champion in 59 and 60, I believe it was. I could be wrong about that, but somewhere around there. And then he parlayed into regular race cars, and then they moved up here and started racing sprint cars. And you know, he's a Hall of Famer for sure. And everybody else in my family, just from being around that, you want to race, you know, at that point. My Uncle Joey raced, my dad raced, Tommy Allen. My brother Todd Allen still races kind of. He's good for about 2 races a year, usually. We just all had to do it at one point or another. And, you know, Jacob Allen is my cousin, and Logan Schuhart's my cousin-ish in a way. So
wow,
we all kind of are into it.
Huge family of racing.
Yeah, yep.
So you grew up, you were going to the track all the time?
Yeah, when I was a kid, you know, it seemed like when I was a kid that Bob was Bobby Allen from here on out. But Bob, you know, it seemed like he won every time we went to the races, you know, but that just might be perspective from being a kid. But yeah, went to the races a lot when I was a kid. I started getting more into it. Actually, Joey Allen, he would take me, he ran the 461 sprint car for Dyer Masonry when I was, you know, 14, 15. He started taking me to the races, and not as a spectator, but to kind of help out. And then I started going on the road with Bob, traveling the country really every summer from the time I was probably 16, you know, on for a long time, off and on.
Wow. So if you weren't working, you were racing? Yeah,
trying to. That was the goal, you know. It was a little bit tougher back then. All the guys that were really big in the sport, you're talking 93, 94, the Steve Kinser, Sammy Swindle, you know, they were in their peak. Nobody was really looking for a kid, you know, so I would run a few races for this guy, a few races for that guy. I'd race wherever I could get a ride, you know, more or less. When I wasn't racing, to stay into it, I would work on, you know, Bob's race car or other people's race cars, just kind of stay relevant.
So when you say getting a ride, you didn't own a car, you drove for someone else?
Yeah, I kind of always drove for someone else off and on, you know, more off than on, let's say. I did own my own car at the end. I ran a few races, and at Lincoln Speedway blew the motor up, and that was kind of like the end of it to me. You know, I sat there in the corner, motor blowed up, and thinking, now what am I going to do, you know? So I walked away from it after that for a while.
When was the last time that you've driven a race car?
I believe it was around 2016 or 17, somewhere in that range. I did run a couple weeks ago for about a lap and a half till I broke my car in hot laps, but other than that, it's been a while since we raced. I want to I'm 52, by the way, so I want to try and prove to myself, I guess, that I can do it. And I kind of want to, maybe win one for the other old guys and the other fat guys and the old fat guys, and make sure we can still do this.
So what are the plans this season?
Primarily running that I know right now at McGrewbid Complex behind Baps Motor Speedway. We race about once a month right now. I think at the end of the season it gets to be a little bit more. And, I plan on winning some races, but you never know. I haven't fully stretched myself out yet to see if we can still do it. So.
Yeah, and like you said, if you're busy at work, this class is still something you can go have fun with once a month.
Yeah, that's what I love about it, and I would like to promote it that way to anybody else thinking about it. It is, it's once a month. It's not a full-time job. It's really good for even like when we were at the track a couple weeks ago, I was watching the younger kids racing that. You only have to be 14 to run these, but adults run them too. And it's a good like stepping stone. You could do double duty in these. Like if a kid turns 14, he's running whatever they're running at McGrewbid Complex. They could also have one of these and once a month experience something different. Yeah. With more not necessarily more horsepower, but the horsepower to weight ratio is definitely better. And also it'd be good. I know there's a lot of like dads that are there that used to race, whatever. It'd actually be good for them too. I could see them, the same thing, like once a month their kids racing, they could also race too.
Yeah, and I guess price-wise, it's smaller, it is racing, it's always going to be expensive, but is this a little bit more affordable for a normal person to get into?
Yes. So you can find, like, especially Facebook Marketplace and that, you can find a good used car that's in running condition for $5,000 if you look around. You can also be stupid and spend a bunch of money too. Like you can spend $12,000 on a motor if you want to go buy the best. You can spend, I don't know if it's $6,000 for a car now or whatever without the motor. So you can definitely spend money, but you don't have to. Definitely, the motors will last all season. You don't have to rebuild them. Like there's a lot to it. It seems like McGrewbid's good on tires, so probably if you had the right tires, you could run for most of the season.
Wow.
I would think, unless it really dries out, but it hadn't yet. So,
how many people around here race this class? 7
of us potentially, which we haven't got all 7 of us together, but we only ran one race. We want 20 people, 30 people, whatever we can get for sure. But right now, there's 7 people who have them right now. The 7th one is Michael Markey, and he hadn't come out yet, so hopefully he dusts off his racing shoes and comes out and races with us. But we want to build it up, and there's people close enough. I know Ohio runs them, and some of those guys have talked about coming in, and Western PA has a series, and some of them, if we get it built up, I think people will get drawn. It's the perfect track for these kind of cars. You can run, if you go back and look at the video from a couple weeks ago, they were running the high groove logo. It was really only 2 cars kind of racing each other that were right near each other, and they were running the high groove, low groove, and catching each other. And then unfortunately, right at the end, the one guy caught the wall and the other guy caught him at the same time, and they crashed pretty good. But it was a hell of a race. It's a perfect track for them.
Was that the first race?
Yes, that was the first race of the season. Yeah.
When would the next one be?
May 7th is the next time that we race there, and then we race roughly once a month after that. May 7th is a Thursday. I believe it's between the 2 Outlaw shows around here.
So if you get a bunch of cars involved, it could definitely catch on around here. It'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, if you look at like the videos from Millbridge Speedway in North Carolina or out in California, it's a big thing out there. They get, I don't know if it's 50 cars. I know they all don't make the feature, and it's huge out there. Kyle Larson started this way. Tyler Reddick started in Outlaw Karts. Rico Abreu. It's a big thing. It could really take off if we keep it going, and that's the goal. That's it. Scott Gobrecht and Colton Baps Motor Speedway. They kind of helped us along. They didn't have to do it for us. They saw them race, I think, at Millbridge and thought they were cool and knew that I was kind of into it and other people were into it. So they're giving us a chance to get it going. They're going to keep it going, till we get enough car count, and then we'll make it worth their while, hopefully.
Your uncle Bobby Allen, do you have any interesting stories about him?
Oh, definitely. Every day was an adventure with him, whether it was on purpose or not. Sometimes it was, sometimes it wasn't. But when I traveled with him in the 90s, he was fast, it was kind of towards the end of his career, but everything was shoestring a little bit, so it made it fun, but it was a challenge always. One story I thought about after he passed away was, might get choked up here, but keep going anyway. So we were out in the Midwest somewhere. He wanted to stop at a grocery store, and he gets out of the truck and he goes in the grocery store, and he comes back out and he's got like an old man, he was probably only my age, so not that old at the time, kind of. But he comes out with an old man sweater on, a bucket hat, and he's like, walking across the parking lot like this. He gets in the truck. I'm like, yeah. So what's going on here? He said, well, I'm practicing for when I get old. Yeah. So Bob was kind of scattered like I am when we talk. So, you know, every conversation would bounce around a million different things. We got talking about life and death and things like that. I said, you know, Bob, I said, I want to write your eulogy when you pass away. And he's like, no, you're not doing that. I said, why not? I said, I'll tell the truth. And he says, that's what I'm worried about. So that was one story, and I thought about that later on. The truth is about Bob, what made him really good was that he could see the potential in things, whether it was race cars or people. He was really good at that. And he told me one time, we were standing there at our go-kart track in Hanover, looking out the window. We were talking about how things could be, you know, we could do this with the track and that with the track. And he stopped me and said, you know, most people don't think like that. And I said, what do you mean? He said, most people see things for how they are, not how they could be. He said, that's not normal. We think everybody thinks like us, but it's not really the case. And that was one of the philosophical things that Bob would say that, you know, might have been just in passing for him, but it would mean a lot to people when he would talk like that. What
did he run?
He ran 410 sprint cars. Like I say, he started out in go-kart. Actually started out in quarter midgets when he was a kid. He ran for IndyCar driver Jim Rathman when he was a kid. My grandfather through racing knew a lot of people from Florida, and Rathman was a IndyCar driver who lived in Florida. And Bob, when he was, I think, 10 years old would be my guess, he actually ran quarter midgets, and they would run in the parking lot of the Miami airport because my grandfather was an airline pilot too. And that's how he kind of got started in it. And then they started racing go-karts, and he traveled to Nassau, the Bahamas. They had world championships at that time, you know, 1959, 60, 61, that era. And he won 2 years in a row down there. 1 year he ran for Jim Rathman in one of his exterminator karts and won. Then he transitioned into running asphalt karts, race cars down there, full-size race cars a little bit. Pennsylvania was the place to go to make money in the 60s, 70s sprint cars. So he came up here because you could run 2 or 3 nights a week. Actually, they started driving up here, I think, on the weekends at first. And the story's kind of well known in the racing community, but he drove to Lincoln Speedway and he slept in the ticket booth, you know? And the owner of Lincoln Speedway found him and said, you know, what are you doing? He's like, I just want to race, you know? So that's how they kind of got into it. And I mean, he won, I don't know what the official count is, but hundreds and hundreds of sprint car races, you know, with the Outlaws, All-Stars locally around here. You know, he's a Hall of Famer. So
your family was originally from Florida and came up here just to race?
Yep. Yeah, we were the Allen family. We could trace back to like the early 1800s in Florida, and yeah, it was just a race. He moved up here. I think if the story is right, he said he moved to Allentown first because, you know, that's our last name, but it wasn't as nice and it was too far away from all the racetracks. So then he came down to Hanover and was there ever since.
Who does help you with the car?
So last time I raced, I helped myself with the car, and I do have a guy that works with me here that went last week with me to help me out or whatever. But basically, I kind of just do it myself. Actually, if you see on the side of the car there, see my crew chief?
Yeah.
That's Opus 4.6. That's AI. And surprisingly, like I was way against AI in the beginning. Like, you know, it's not human, not natural, whatever it is. And then I started using it for business and looking at it, and I just asked it one day, because I actually, from the last time I raced, I changed the head of my motor, a bunch of stuff, and I kind of asked it, let's say, what should I jet this motor at? And I just took pictures of everything I had. And the only thing I had to tell it was what the carburetor was, because it probably couldn't see that in the pictures. And it started calculating, and it's going through all this stuff, and it says, where are you racing at? What do you mean, where am I racing at? I said McGrewbid Complex. And it starts, you can see it thinking if you've ever played with AI. So it's thinking, and it pulls up a sea level map. That's why I wanted to know where I was racing at, so I could figure out sea level for air density on the thing. And it comes out with you know, what to jet the carburetor at and what to mix the fuel at. And I didn't say, I typed, but I typed in there, you know, it looks a little rich from the last time I ran. It's like, well, you're running an unknown, so we want to make it rich to begin with. It says, take a picture of the spark plug after the first race and send it to me, and I'll analyze it and tell you if we're rich or lean or not and where we can go from there. So I really like, to me, it kind of is my crew chief.
Yeah, so if you don't have a whole crew with you, that's something to rely on.
Yeah, you got to double check. It's not infallible, but it was pretty good. Like, you got to know to ask the right questions if it gets something wrong, and it's not anything that I couldn't have done myself, but I couldn't have done it in a minute and a half,
Yeah.
let's say. You know?
Yeah, and like typically if you're going to go race a race car, you're going to have a bunch of people with you that know how to do that.
Yeah, if you have the money or if you're exciting enough, they'll come, but I'm not either of those, so.
Well, you want to have a good time once a month.
Yep.
That's great. What are some of the names on this car this season?
So we have ISI. It's actually the same car from 8 years ago, so we'll go through that part too. But you know, ISI is the biggest help that I have. They let me do a lot here, which I wouldn't have been able to probably even do this if they didn't let me do that. Behind you is Burgard Cycle, which the last time I raced, he helped me a lot. He helped rebuild the motors, but he's passed away now, so I couldn't bring myself to take it off the car. JRC Transportation, Joe Tartaglia from JRC. When I was racing the first time, he actually gave me some quarter midgets for my kids to race too, so he helped out that way. Bilco Fabrication, he same thing the last time, where he actually worked for ISI at the time, and you know, he helped me out a little bit. He actually helped me push start the first time that we fired it up a long time ago. And Wide Open Racing Media was the guy who runs a merchandise trailer for the World of Outlaws now. Before he did that, he kind of did a little bit what you guys are doing right now. And that was his thing there, Wide Open Racing Media.
Why do they call it an outlaw kart?
Because it kind of looks like a sprint car a little bit, but a normal, even the wide open karts that they run, the unlimited ones, probably have a 250cc motor, which we're allowed up to a 500cc two-stroke or a 454-stroke on them. And the wings obviously make an outlaw kart. The basis of it is really a normal go-kart, and we'll do something here real quick. So the cage is actually on springs.
Oh.
And the reason they do that is so that the bottom part of it is actually a flat cart. They make some specialized ones, you know, that a lot of people run, but that is actually a phantom flat cart on the bottom there. The cages are on springs so that it doesn't affect the way that the chassis runs. Otherwise it would be too stiff and you just bounce around the track. It's a CR500, which that was the name of the motorcycle too that they robbed them off of always, but it's 500cc two-stroke motor. It still has all the gears in it. You know, you can take off in first gear. I'll take off in third gear on the start sometimes and then shift to fourth gear to race in. The horsepower to weight ratio is awesome on them. And they run like a sprint car. Like if you see the video from a couple weeks ago at McGrewbid Complex, they run the high groove, the low groove, racing each other. Like it's really fun to race for not $100,000, let's say.
So can you go find one of these engines, say on Facebook Marketplace, and then get it built, is what they're doing to them? I mean,
they run them stock a lot of times, and some of our guys do. I ported that one myself. You know, two strokes are easier that way. The four strokes, you kind of have to run titanium valves and do a lot of porting to them, and somebody else should probably do that. But you could run a stock one and be competitive for sure. And you can get the motors, Facebook Marketplace. They were really expensive when everybody was really into it. They were disappearing. They stopped making that motor, I think, in '94. Somebody's going to end up correcting me, but somewhere around '94. So they were hard to get for a little bit, but now they're becoming easier to get. And you know, you can get a motor for a couple $1,000s and do a little bit of porting yourself, or change the exhaust to make it faster, carburetor, things like that. So it's something you can definitely still do yourself.
What are some upgrades you can do to these things? Because it's not stock, right?
No, and you know, the motor you can port, you can do stuff like that. The kart itself, you can buy everything kind of, but I didn't grow up that way. I'm not built that way. This thing is actually a lot of titanium, a lot of carbon fiber, a lot of aluminum, aircraft bolts, things like that. It's just, when I was racing sprint cars, there was no weight limit, so that's just, my mentality runs that way. And I enjoy it. You know, I like to think, how light can I make something until it breaks, which happened a couple weeks ago. It broke, but that didn't really have anything to do with that. First night we went to go race a couple weeks ago, I was actually working on the car till 3:30 and getting ready to load it up. I'm like, you know what, damn, we never even scaled this thing to see how much it weighs, because we have to weigh 475 with the driver. So we ran it down to the scale down here, and it was 475 with the driver. Like we were barely there, which is actually pretty light for these things. But like I say, a lot of titanium, things like that. And
what are the rules for these? Are there a lot of rules?
Not really. And I actually did peruse the rule book before we did this, but I'm not going to remember half of it. So take it all with a grain of salt. But I believe you have to be 14 to run them, and the parents have to sign off on them. The motors, two strokes can be stamped 500cc. I believe they could be bigger than that. But that has to be the basis of it to start. And the four strokes have to be 450cc. And then the weights kind of change. I think with the four strokes, it has to be 500 pounds instead of 475. And you can run, because there's a lot of micro guys around here. We've had guys do that before where they'll run a micro motor or 270.
Oh, okay.
And the weight is less. You can be less weight, you know, with a 270. It makes it semi-competitive. Eventually you're going to want something bigger, because that's just how it goes.
But to start out,
yeah.
Or if that's all you have.
Yep. And you know, there's safety rules. Everything's got to be up to date. Your seat belts, helmet, things like that. I don't really think there's a whole lot beyond that. You're not allowed to treat your tires, because that just messes up the track anyway. If you've ever been to a go-kart race, it just lays all that stuff down on the track, and it's a stuck track. Then you're not having any fun. But like I say, a couple weeks ago, you didn't need to do that at all. The track was fast. It was wide open. It was a lot of fun. I wish I would have ran more than a lap and a half, to be honest with you.
May 7th, you'll be back at McGrewbid Complex.
Yes, sir.
Racing Outlaw Karts.
Yep.
Being a Thursday, is it the only class that's back there?
No, I believe that most of the normal classes, the junior sprints and the micros, everything will be there.
Okay.
It'll be a late night.
So if anyone wants to come and see what these things are.
Yeah, the gates probably open at 5 o'clock, and racing will start at 7 is my guess on that night, but don't hold me to that.
Well, this is very interesting for us. So this is something I'm going to have to watch.
Yeah, we'll get you in one day.
I'm not trying to spend any more money, but it's definitely cool. We really appreciate you having us out. The stories, the history of your family is awesome. I can't wait to see you run this thing.
Me too.
So we'll be out on a Thursday to see you for sure.
All right.
And Eric, thank you for having us.
Hey, thanks for coming. Thank you.
With that being said, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment down below, and we'll see you on the next one.